Molly Jackson Jolly with Forbes. Today I'm joined by Kathy Chaney, who is the VP of Print for the National Association of Black Journalists. She's also the executive editor for YR Media. And as a point of interest, she began her career as a Forbes intern. So I'm just going to jump right in. Part of the reason I wanted to have you here today was because we're approaching May 25th, which will mark 3 years since, under COVID lockdown, we all sat glued to our devices as we watched George Floyd's murder. And our industry, which is the media industry, made pledges to do better, to create newsrooms that looked more like America and society. So my first question to you, how are we doing?
We are doing okay. I think in the first year and a half, going up to 2 years after his murder, we were kind of making strides in the newsroom where we were being a little bit more conscious of, how we were putting out the news, the nuances of situations like that, and just being really empathetic, and sensitive to the nature of those types of stories and how sorely diversity in the newsroom was needed. And I think as we moved out of year 2, going into year 3, we're seeing a lot of, I don't want to say change, but there's been a shift where there have been positions that were created within newsrooms to make sure that they focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts within newsrooms. And that was a good thing. But then you began to wonder, as some outlets are closing up those beats, they're taking away those positions. Were they all just for show? Was it just a trendy thing to do? So it's disappointing to see, because you have race teams at some outlets that have just completely been disbanded, So we're doing okay. I'm hoping that the newsrooms that have closed those beats, taken away those positions, are continuing to do the work without having the title of, the race justice, social justice team or something like that. I'm hoping that the work is going to continue and our efforts have not just been wasted.
So you touched on something that you and I had a brief conversation about, and that is when newsrooms and media companies try to close that gap by creating diversity beats. Often it is Black and brown and people from marginalized communities who are put in those beats. And then there's something that you said you've noticed, I've noticed as well, which is a bit of fatigue, which is, I think Black journalists sometimes will express that they feel it's their duty to be the voice of the Black community and sometimes an otherwise non-diverse newsroom, but that leads to burnout. And so would you tell me, in your role as YR Media, you're working with training the next generation of Black and brown journalists. What do how do we fix that? How do we make sure that we're not burning out our Black journalists?
I think the easiest thing to do is to take a step back and put yourself in those shoes. Think of yourself as that emerging journalist now, versus then, the lessons that you've learned, what things burnt you out, and then just make sure that you're telling your reporters, just pay attention to your time, take a moment. I know that we're in the business of, we want to get things out first, but you need to be accurate, but you also need to, you have that empathy. I think journalists, especially the veterans, we're so into the, I can't show emotions. Of course, your opinion is not included in anything, but you're still human. So make sure that you're bringing your authentic self to work with you, but not to overload yourself. Know your limits. Don't stretch yourself thin. And, I always tell my reporters, please don't suffer in silence. If you need some help, speak up. Don't try to soldier through it all and say, oh, I can do this, I can handle this. Just say, hey, give me one moment. And I can understand that. But don't suffer in silence. Don't take on too much more than you can handle. And I know that some newsrooms, some editors, they've grown up in the industry where it's I can handle everything. I have to do more with less. I have to keep pushing at it, keep pushing at it. And I just have to do it all right now. Some things can't wait until tomorrow. When you have to tell yourself, no, it really can wait till tomorrow. I need to take a break. Even if it's 15 minutes. If you're doing a lunch, you're going on lunch. Eat your lunch, put your phone down, don't think of anything else. If you're going to go sit by yourself, but I know it's easier said than done. A lot of us have that, well, we'll work through lunch thing, but I think it's critical to set those boundaries for yourself. And you can do it in a very healthy way. And then also to help with burnout, it's something that I've had to learn to do, that I've just come out of doing over the last, let's say, 3 years, is if I'm off, I'm off. I'm not paying attention to the news because I will get sucked back into, oh, let me find out what's going on. Let me check in and make sure that they have this tip, or I'm fielding tips. You've got to be off. When you are off, please disconnect. It definitely helps with burnout. And as long as you're carrying your load, just make sure that you are taking care of yourself. That's just like the easiest thing to do, but don't feel like you have to be on 24/7 because the news is on 24/7.
Yeah.